in the dense Rainvale forest, where every step is soaked in mist, and the sounds of insects echo day and night, a young forest ranger is bound and left in the depths of the forest, simply because he discovered a deadly secret. In the face of despair and deep darkness, a K-9 unit of four-legged warriors broke through every boundary to find him. This is not just a rescue story, but a journey of courage, trust, and a bond of friendship without words, between humans and dogs. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That's how we continue sharing these unforgettable stories of loyalty, resilience, and the bond between humans and dogs that defy all odds. The scorching, midday heat of June bears down on the Rainvale forest like a heavy, damp blanket. The air here is not only hot but suffocating and sticky, seeping through the thick mosquito-repellent jacket. Beneath the dense canopy of the conservation area, each bead of sweat crawls down Liam Carter's back. He's the youngest forest ranger on the team, just turned 20. Liam is on the third day of his survey of a new patrol route, a trail rarely traversed, running along the northeast slopes of the conservation area. He's freshly graduated from the Forestry Academy, burning with determination, believing that nature is the only place where he truly belongs. But the Rainvale Forest is unlike any reserve he's studied before. Humid, mysterious, and always with something lurking amidst the cicada calls and the hazy sunlight filtering through the leaves. The infrared camera Liam set up at G12 has been silent for 2 days. He pauses in a small clearing, cautiously crouching to check. The camera lens is slightly misaligned. Someone had tampered with it. And that was the first moment everything started to take a turn. On the small screen that flickers to life, Liam sees a video. 3 men dressed in camouflage, wearing gloves and carrying large bags, moving close to the edge of the forbidden forest zone, an area where no one is allowed to enter or exploit. There's no good reason for them to be there. Instinctively, Liam reaches for his radio to contact the station. But just then, a soft noise sounds from behind him, like dry leaves being stepped on. He barely had time to turn before a dark figure slammed into the back of his neck. Everything went black. Liam wakes up with sharp pain in both his wrists. They're shackled with rough metal chains. One cheek is swollen, and his lip is bleeding. All around him are thick trees, vines tangled everywhere, and the ground covered with damp moss. The light barely penetrates the dense canopy above. He realizes he's been tied to the base of an ancient tree. No signal, no way out, no chance to escape. One of the masked men, his voice low and hoarse, leans close to his ear and whispers, "No one's gonna find you here, kid. It'll be a long time before a helicopter even gets close." He chuckles softly, the smell of cheap cigarettes in his breath. Then the group disappears into the forest, leaving Liam alone in the dark core, where the birds have fallen silent, and even the wind refuses to blow. At the same time that Liam was being left behind in the forest, over 2 kilometers to the southwest, in a dense, damp patch of woodland where the sunlight barely touched the ferns on the ground, a K-9 training team was conducting a search and rescue drill under extreme conditions. Leading the team was Isla Monroe, a seasoned trainer who had served in peacekeeping special forces. She was known not only for her iron discipline, but also for her ability to read a dog's body language with the accuracy of second nature. The K-9 team consisted of 5 German shepherds, all highly trained, former military or police service dogs, Among them stood out Ghost, the dog with a scar across his left eye, injured during a hostage rescue mission in the Middle East. Ghost was silent, aloof, and not overly friendly with strangers, but had never made a mistake in a high-pressure situation. That day's training was supposed to last only a few hours, following a set path with scent markers and navigation exercises. However, less than 20 minutes after starting, Ghost suddenly stopped. He took a deep breath, inhaling a damp, pungent odor, not animal scent but human scent, mixed with rust, sweat, and something unusual. Fear. Without waiting for orders, Ghost broke from formation and ran straight east, where the vines were thick and the leaves formed a canopy like a natural dome. Isla shouted as she grabbed the radio. "Ghost has left the path. The whole team is heading east at 85 degrees. There may be a real situation." The remaining dogs seemed to understand the silent command immediately. All of them followed Ghost in unison. No barking, no commotion, just synchronized, swift and sharp movements like blades slicing through the forest's shadow. By now, Liam was nearly delirious. His eyes were barely open, his breath thin as mist. He could no longer feel the pain in his tightly shackled wrists or the damp heat rising from the earth. But from a distance, in his unconscious state, he heard the soft but steady sound of footsteps. Unlike the sound of human shoes, a shadowy figure darted through the leaves, then another and another. Liam was too disoriented to react, but Ghost didn't need to react. It stood still. No barking, no growling, just watching. Its eyes were as sharp as steel, as taut as a bowstring meeting Liam's blurry gaze. Then Ghost crouched and slowly approached, as if not wanting to frighten Liam. It sniffed, confirming the victim's condition. A weak pulse reduces body temperature. It looked up, emitting a short, not a bark, but a command. Two other dogs immediately began digging at the roots near Liam's wrists, where the chains were looped around a rock ledge. A third ran back along the original path, clearly to guide Isla to them. Ghost stood guard in front of Liam like a warrior, protecting the helpless victim, and waited for the humans to arrive. In the Rainvale forest, the sounds never stop. The calls of birds echo through the treetops. Insects hum from deep within the earth. And sometimes the sound of strange footsteps can be heard among the decaying leaves. But on this particular morning, all those sounds seemed to be drowned out by an urgent feeling when Isla Munro saw Ghost suddenly change behavior. The dog no longer followed its usual training commands, but turned around. Eyes focused deep into the forest, then growled, the growl seeming to say, "Follow me, now." Without any further orders, Isla tightened her backpack and whistled sharply, and the whole team immediately shifted from training mode to emergency search mode. As she ran after Ghost, Isla spoke into the radio. "Every unit, switch to target approach mode. Potentially, a live victim was detected. I repeat, there is someone in the forest." Minutes later, the team pushed through a dense patch of vines, an area without any trails, where the GPS maps became useless. Then they saw it. An unforgettable sight. A young man, shackled to the trunk of a tree with rusted military-grade chains, his limbs covered in dirt, sweat and dried blood staining his collar, barely conscious. Liam Carter. Beneath the decaying leaves and wet soil, long dragging marks were still fresh, signs that someone or something had dragged heavy bags out of the area not long before. Isla stopped for a moment, feeling her palms go cold, partly out of worry, partly because she knew. This was not just an accident. This was the trace of a crime. She kneeled beside Liam, using a knife from her boot to cut the auxiliary ropes from the chains, then signaled to the rescue team. Set up a first aid station here. Prepare a stretcher. We need to get him out in 30 minutes before his body temperature drops any further. Ghost sat right beside Liam, never moving an inch. Its eyes followed every move of Isla, as if to say, I brought you here. Now it's your turn to save him. Liam woke up in a large medical tent, the bright medical lights shining on his face. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the earthy scent of the wet forest after the rain. His left hand had an IV drip, and his forehead was bandaged. Someone was gently wiping sweat from his face. He frowned, his mouth dry. But when his eyes cracked open, the first thing he saw was not the lights, but the calm, amber eyes of Ghost, lying right next to his bed, its head resting on his leg as if guarding the world from hurting him again. A weak smile crept across Liam's lips. It was faint, but real enough to bring a lump to his throat. I thought I was going to die, but you came. Isla walked over, standing beside the bed, her gaze softening a bit. It wasn't us. It was Ghost. It heard a call that no one else could hear. Liam slowly turned his head to look at the dog, then back at Isla. It doesn't need to hear with its ears. It feels it. I don't know how to thank you. Isla gently shook her head, her eyes filled with respect. If you want to thank it, live. And speak the truth, because I'm sure the ones who did this haven't stopped. And in that moment, between the buzzing of the generator in the makeshift tent, in the damp forest that once hid ruthless smugglers, a life was saved, not by luck, but by the instincts, loyalty, and unwavering dedication of a battle-hardened dog. As night fell on the Rainvale forest, everything seemed to sink into a symphony of life and mystery. The croaking of frogs echoed from distant swamps. The wings of bats fluttered through the canopy, and the breeze whispered through the forest itself. But near the makeshift medical station, the artificial light from floodlights still shone brightly. Inside the tent, technicians were busy analyzing GPS data extracted from the trap cameras Liam had carried the day he was ambushed. One of them, an agent named Colin, suddenly fell silent as he looked at the screen. Wait, this coordinate. It's not in any of Rainvale's official patrol routes. It's even deeper than the boundary of the protected forest. Isla approached, furrowing her brow. Are you sure? That core area has been classified as inaccessible for years. No one is allowed to step in. Colin nodded and pointed at the last recorded movement of Liam, captured by his wrist device. But this is his last known location, right before the device lost signal, exactly between two dry riverbeds, an area the archives report as biologically insignificant. Isla paused, an odd feeling rising within her. Biologically insignificant. That term was often used to exclude areas from attention, but it was too vague for a tropical forest with one of the most diverse ecosystems. When Liam woke up for the second time that day, Isla entered the tent with an expression that no longer resembled that of a rescuer, but someone in search of answers. Liam, do you remember exactly why you veered off route? The young man furrowed his brow, breathing slowly, then nodded slightly. I was planning to head back after checking the fourth camera, but when I reviewed the memory card, I found something strange. What was it? Liam turned his head and looked directly at Isla, his voice low but certain. Someone had moved through the restricted zone, dragging very large sacks. Not just once, at least 3 times in the past month. He swallowed and continued. I reported part of the data in last week's technical meeting, but no one followed up. After that, I looked into old records and found an internal report from 4 years ago, mentioning suspicions of illegal logging and wildlife trafficking in that very core area. But the file was closed. Reason? Lack of evidence. Isla felt a chill run down her spine. The traces out there, the deep, dragging marks, the human footprints near where Liam had been tied, and the accidentally missing spots on the maps. It was no longer just coincidence. Do you think someone in the organization cleared the way for this to go smoothly? Liam nodded. I can't be sure, but whoever took me knew this forest better than the maps. And they're not afraid of being discovered, because they know no one patrols there. Isla clenched her fist, her gaze hardening. Outside, Ghost still lay guarding the tent entrance, its eyes sharp, as though it knew something bigger was about to unfold than just a rescue. A truth is being hidden. A deep conspiracy lurks beneath the guise of untamed nature. And now, those thought to be lost in the forest are the first to step into the forbidden zone, their eyes wide open. The rainforest rain began to fall late in the afternoon, heavy and relentless, like the sound of deep drums echoing on the makeshift roof of the ranger station. Inside, the K-9 team and rescue crew had settled down after a long day, and Liam was writing up the report. Everyone thought tonight would be a peaceful night, but the Rainvale forest had never easily forgiven those who dug up its secrets. Around 2 a.m., when the night was as thick as velvet curtains draped over every corner, Ghost suddenly sprang to attention. No barking, no growling, just standing upright, ears perked, eyes fixed on the dark forest outside. A second later, it bolted down the hallway at lightning speed. In the main tent, the power went out. The radio fell silent. The monitor switched to pure black. In the darkness, only the sound of water dripping from the eaves and footsteps, not from the team, could be heard. Isla jolted awake, pulling out her tactical flashlight and pistol from under her pillow. A crack rang out from the back door. The lock was broken. "Liam, wake up! We're being infiltrated," Isla whispered urgently. Liam, though still weak, immediately understood the situation. His young instincts told him, this time, they weren't here to threaten. They were here to silence. Ghost came back, gently grabbing Liam's shirt with its mouth, pulling him up. Without a word, the dog seemed to signal, "Move now. Trust me." Isla led the way, Ghost in the middle, and Liam followed closely behind. The 3 of them moved through the pitch-black corridor of the ranger station, using every shadow and corner like soldiers. Liam's heartbeat pounded like war drums in his ears, but Ghost remained calm, as though on a mission. Footsteps echoed behind them. They didn't have much time. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out from the south storage. Isla signaled to stop. Ghost surged ahead, and for the first time it growled, a low, menacing sound. A stranger lunged from the shadows, aiming to strike Isla with a knife, but Ghost lunged at him like a live bullet. The man was knocked to the ground, his knife clattering away. Isla closed in, subduing him in seconds. She yanked the hood off his face and froze. Mark Howie, the technician, the one who had installed the camera system for the team, the one who had always eagerly assisted her and Liam during their surveys. Now, He was lying on the ground, his eyes filled with hatred. "I trusted you," Isla whispered, almost unable to believe her eyes. Mark sneered, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. "You thought that camera system was for protection, didn't you? No, it's to know when to turn it off." Liam clenched his fists, blood boiling in his veins. "You're the one who helped the smugglers. You guided them into the restricted zone." Mark lifted his chin, still defiant. "I'm just a small link in the chain. There are many more, even within your team. You think it's just me?" The atmosphere thickened inside the tent. Isla looked at Ghost. The dog's eyes were still fixed on the door. It knew the battle wasn't over. The enemies outside were still in the forest, and they weren't alone. At dawn, the Rainvale forest was still shrouded in mist. The weak sunlight sliced through the thick canopy like thin blades, casting eerie shadows on the damp ground. Liam sat on the steps of the ranger station, his blood-stained shirt clinging to him, his mind spinning after a night of nightmares. Beside him, Ghost lay, breathing softly, its shoulder still bleeding from the scratches it got while fighting the attacker. Despite that, its eyes remained wide open, never leaving the front door. Watchful, always watchful. Inside the station, Isla Monroe and the Special Investigation Team had just received the final data from the recovered system. And within the hidden logs, files deliberately mislabeled as equipment check, the horrifying truth emerged. All the data from the smuggling group's journey, the route, timing, patrol density, and camera trap locations, had been extracted from a single computer. The computer of the Chief Ranger, Mr. Harris. Isla slammed her hand on the table. It was him who let them in. Not just this time, but for years. Liam stood up, cold sweat pouring down his back. A different kind of cold, aside from the forest rain. Cold from betrayal. Harris, the one everyone respected. The man who had patted Liam on the back when he first got his assignment, saying, "You can do it, city boy." Yet it was he who gave the order to clean up Liam. Just then, a loud popping noise rang out from the west warehouse. Isla rushed out, pulling her gun, Liam following behind. And Ghost shot forward like a shadow cutting through the wind. They arrived to find the warehouse door wide open. A figure was retreating. Harris, holding a handgun, his face pale. Even in his 50s, he still took slow steps back, the gun aimed straight at Liam. "I told you, you shouldn't have survived." His voice trembled, unclear whether from anger or fear. Liam stood still, unmoving. "Why? Because I discovered what you were hiding? Because I refused to stay silent?" Harris hissed. "Do you think the government funding is enough to sustain this place? They're selling off every part of the forest, every rare species, and I only cooperated to survive." Isla lowered her gun, her voice as cold as steel. "You ordered to kill someone just to survive." A moment passed. Then Harris pulled the trigger. Everything happened in an instant. The gunshot echoed through the forest. Liam collapsed backward, but not because the bullet hit. Ghost had lunged forward, shielding Liam's chest. The bullet embedded into the dog's left shoulder, blood pouring, soaking into its thick fur. It collapsed, but made no growl, no cry. It just lay there, its eyes still locked on Harris as if saying, "I'm still here." Liam screamed, catching Ghost in his arms, trembling all over. "No, no, you can't leave." Harris froze. It was that gaze, the gaze of a creature who couldn't speak a word but was willing to sacrifice itself for someone, that made him step back, dropping the gun to the ground. When the police arrived and handcuffed him, Isla didn't even glance at him. She simply crouched down, her hands trembling, as she ripped her shirt to apply pressure on Ghost's wound, whispering, "You are a hero, a true warrior." Liam whispered close to Ghost's ear, "I owe you my life." And at that moment, amidst the sound of the forest rain, the rustling leaves and the sirens of the ambulance, Ghost, even with blood still flowing, wagged its tail lightly. It knew its mission was complete. The sunrise over the Rainvale Reserve was never the same. As the sun rose above the dense canopy, the golden light passed through the dew-covered leaves, painting gentle streaks of light like a promise from nature. We are still here, and we will not back down. Liam Carter stood in front of the old wooden shack, where he had first been sent for patrol, where his life had almost ended, and where everything truly began. A week after the arrest of the traitor Harris and the smuggling ring, Liam received an offer from his superiors in the city. An office position, a good salary, and absolute safety. But when he reached the final line of the letter, his hand quietly folded the paper. Go back to the city. He shook his head. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. Liam chose to stay. Why? Because he understood that this was not just a forest. It was a place that needed those who could listen more than those who could give orders. And above all, here, there was still a warrior who would never leave his side. Ghost, the German shepherd with a scar over its left eye, still walked beside him. Though its left leg was still bandaged, it stood guard at the station gate, still followed Liam on the first patrols after the incident, and still lay beside him every night, as though the survival of the whole forest depended on its breath. One day, Isla walked into the temporary office, holding an envelope sealed with the red insignia of the command. She placed it on the desk and smiled. "Congratulations, Captain Liam Carter. Official orders. You and Ghost will head the K9 unit. Mission: expand the Rainvale surveillance area and train the new generation of K9s. Liam went silent. 20 years old. A year ago, he was just a rookie, his eyes still full of curiosity, his hands still clumsy with the GPS. And now, a promise had become a reality. He was the protector, and Ghost was his fateful companion. Liam knelt and embraced Ghost, without saying a word. But Ghost understood. Its eyes were still deep, still bright, and for the first time since being shot, it barked once. Short, decisive, like a promise that didn't need explaining. Since that day, the people of Rainvale had gotten used to the sight of a young man covered in forest mud with a radio slung over his shoulder, walking alongside a large dog with a calm, steady gaze. They were not just rangers. They were a symbol of something greater. Faith, the ability to rise again, and the reminder that no matter how deep you've been left behind in the wild, as long as you have a heart that doesn't give up and a soul that doesn't turn away, you will find your way. They called them the Survivor Duo, but Liam simply called it, "We are just a man and a dog, and we guard what's right." Some stories don't need heroes in capes. They don't need brilliant halos. They just need a young man who refuses to give up and a loyal dog carrying the scars of battles fought for what's right. Liam and Ghost didn't just survive. They lived to protect, to inspire, and to remind us that no matter how dark the night may get, courage and true friendship will always be the light that leads the way. If this story touched your heart, share it to spread love, faith, and the quiet sacrifice that warriors without words, like Ghost, are bringing to this world. Thank you for listening. And remember, loyal love always knows the way back.